Hey YouTube, CMAP716. This is the first video on my channel. I decided to do a review slash preview of NHL 14 in its demo that dropped last Tuesday on the 20th. Anyone who's interested, the retail copy will be released September 10th this year. Also released September 10th, we have the FIFA 14 demo, and FIFA 14 will be released September 24th. Coming up this Tuesday, we have the Madden retail copy being released. So there's a lot of stuff dropping from EA Sports in a little bit of time. A lot of big things coming from EA. So without further ado, let's get into this demo review. Accidentally rhymed. That was not purposely. All right, but more seriously. First thing I noticed about NHL 14 is the graphics. Um, I walked into the room, my brother was playing it, and I actually thought he was playing NHL 13. And the graphics, there wasn't very, if at all, an update. To some people, that might be something that's huge, that might actually matter to some people, to others, it might not. To me, I'm leaning more to it doesn't matter because we're coming to the end of a console generation. A lot of these games are maxed out. You're not going to see many new things in terms of graphics that these games could really come up with. A lot of these games are, and companies are worried about, what they're going to do next for the next generation. And that's the same thing with NHL this year. So graphically, it's not really a big of an update, but I feel like they added enough features into the game that still warranted a purchase. And the first feature I want to talk about, and the first thing when I played the game and noticed, was the collision physics engine. This ties in with the body checks. There's a new body checking system. Before, like in previous generations, you'd see a lot of checks that were more shoves and pushes rather than actual collision checks. This year they added to where you'll see your player actually use his shoulder to make the hit rather than, little pushes and shoves. Um, you get some brutal hits, some brutal big hits, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on the big hits later on in the video when I'm talking about the Enforcer engine, which is the new fighting engine. So you'll see a lot more hits that actually make sense. You'll see a lot more hits that um, are realistic. You'll see players fall at a realistic fashion. Like you won't see players flipping the air like you might have seen last year. Like where you hit a player, how you hit them, the speed, the size, the rate that you're coming in, all that actually factors into hits this year. They factored in to previous years as well, but this year they factor in a realistic manner, which is very cool to see in the game. Um, like I was talking about the big hits, the next thing is the new fighting engine, the Enforcer engine. Pretty much you'll see fights happen more spontaneous rather than they did in the previous games. Fights were more, I don't want to use the word stage, but they were more triggered by you. Like if you wanted to fight, you had the ability. If you had the ability and you were the person who determined whether you fight or not. That's not the case this year. Um, Fights can happen at any time, anywhere, any place. Um, One thing, if you break the rules, like if the whistle blows and you hit a player, or if you shoot on the goalie after the whistle blows, all this can trigger fights. Also triggering fights is if you hit a star player very hard, or if you are a defenseman who's making a lot of big hits, and you know the other team just might get fed up with it, and they might want to fight because of that. My question is, you only get two teams in the demo, so does it differ from each team you play? Because a team like Boston, anytime you hit a player, it seemed like they wanted to fight you. Anytime you made a big hit, as Chicago, that's the other team in the demo, they seem like they wanted to fight you. I don't know if that's just because it's Boston and they're more of a defensive minded team, a bully kind of team. Does it differ from if you're a smaller defensive team or if you're a smaller team in general? Does it differ? That's my question. And that's why I'm kind of excited to see in the retail version. Or is it universal to where if you know, make a hit on a player, then they'll just want to fight just because you made a hit on a player? That's something I'm very interested in. To talk about the actual fighting, it's not a first person thing anymore. They've zoomed it out. It's now third person. You can also see the rest of your teammates jostling back and forth with the opposing teammates, and the fighting engine is a lot like how the Fight Night series was. To me, I like the new fighting engine. I'm not sure on what anyone else thinks about it so far. I haven't watched any reviews. I just wanted to get my thoughts on there. I didn't want anyone else's opinions on mine before I did a review on the demo. So for me, I personally like the fighting engine. I thought it was needed. We've had the same fighting engine since NHL 10. I don't know if I said that or not, but it has been the same fighting engine since NHL 10. So it seems more of like a fresh breath of air, if you will, to have a third-person fighting engine. Next thing I noticed is the after the whistle, like after a dead whistle, you'll see a lot of jostling back and forth. It's a cool addition to see, but to me, I feel like it happens too much. Like almost after every whistle, it's jostling back and forth, which I don't feel like that's the case, and that doesn't really happen in hockey. Let me throw this out here. I'm not the biggest hockey fan, but I feel like I've watched enough hockey to see that jostling back and forth doesn't happen every single time by every single player. Another thing about the jostling back and forth is you can't come in if there's two. You can only two people can be in a animation at a time. So you can't come in as a third player and either break up the jostling or jostle with one of the two players, which to me I feel is something that is needed, because if you have a player like Chara and he's jostling back with Patrick Kane or one of your goal scorers, you obviously don't want Patrick Kane to fight Chara. If you want to bring one of your defensive players into that, you can't do that. So that's something that I would like to see improved on or touched on for the future, where you can see more than two players jostling at a time after the whistle. For anyone who's played the demo, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The next thing I want to talk about is the goaltending. You see a lot more realistic goalie saves and goalie interactions this year. There was an improvement from NHL 12 on one-timers, which was an improvement that was needed because there was too many one-timers back in NHL 12. That was fixed on for NHL 13. So the goalie has just been improved once again for NHL 14 in terms of realism and how he reacts to the puck. Another cool thing, I don't know if it's just me, but if your goalie makes a lot of saves just throughout the game, he kind of gets on a streak to where it feels like you can't score anything on him. And it's the exact opposite. If he lets in a lot of goals, it feels like you could score a lot easier than he would if he didn't let in a lot of goals. I don't know if that's just me. I don't know if they factor that in or not, but that's definitely something that I noticed from the demo so far. Like, um, if I have a couple score lead, it's a lot easier for me to get the third goal than it would be if it was a 0-0 game and for me to get that first goal. So that's a cool thing that I like that NHL does with their series. The next thing I want to talk about is the one-touch deking system. That's their new deke system. Before, you'd have to hit R1 or what is the or not R1. You'd have to hit L1 left back button. I don't know, whatever it's called on the Xbox, and you'd have to use your right stick to make moves. Now you just hit R1, it makes the move for you, or you can hit R1 and you can hit your left trigger to do moves now. It kind of reminds me a lot of how Madden's doing the precision modifier moves this year. How you can hit L2 and do different moves. It's the same thing as the one-touch deking system. Um, it also kind of reminds me of how 2K used to do their crossovers back in like 2K11, to where the movement stick was also the crossover stick as well, which isn't the case now. But to me, I personally like the one-touch deacon system. I thought it would be a little bit tough to adjust to, but it's not tough at all to adjust to. It's very, very easy to adjust to. It it's to me, I feel like it's a good addition. I like it. It's a lot easier to chain your moves together, which I like. A couple more things to talk about. Live the life mode. I'll make this one very short. That's kind of like 2K's my career mode. It replaced the be a legend mode, be a pro mode, whatever it's called. I really don't play this mode at all, but when I see from the trailer, it looks very, very text based. Um, Pretty much 2K, the the way 2K did their my career mode, it kind of ruined all other games in their single player career modes, because you kind of want to see your player through the press conferences. You kind of want to see them do, talk to the GM, stuff like that. And I don't think that that's in this mode this year. So it looked, like I said before, it looked very, very text based, and you know, in what you've seen from 2K, it just kind of ruins this mode. I really have never been a fan of the single player modes either way, so I probably won't play it either way. So, you know, either way, live the life mode. It is what it is. Probably something I will jump into this year. And the final thing I'm gonna touch on is the true performance skating. Last year, this was added in, but it was pretty much just refined. Because pretty much once you got to your top speed with any player and you tried to turn, it felt like you were turning a moving van or a bus. It just was so hard to stop on a dime and turn and stuff. That's definitely fixed this year. Getting to your top speed and turning is a lot easier than it was last year. If you're a more agile player, it's a lot easier for you to turn, obviously, than if you're, a big defenseman. So that's a very, very cool feature that I feel is something that really helps the series. And hopefully I want to see a lot more games, you know, add this true performance skating kind of idea, to where if you're at your top speed and you're turning, you have to slow down to do so. There's too many games to where you see a player at top speed stop on a dime and get back up to their top speed. That's something that I feel NHL does a very, very good job in, differing from player to player, getting up to top speed, getting back down to zero, going from 0 to 60, if you will. I feel NHL does a very, very good job of this. So overall, I like what I've seen so far from NHL. Some people think that it's not worth the purchase. Me personally, I think it is. I feel like they've done enough to, you know, make the game different from NHL 13, and it's not really an update to where it's like you feel gypped. I feel like they've actually done enough to, warrant it a purchase. But video has ran very long, and it's your man, CMAF716, signing out.